Hi everyone, James with Niv AEtuts, and today we'll be looking at shooting and compositing with grain cards. Now, why do we need to use grain cards in compositing? Well, the footage that we shoot on, as we can see here, has grain in it because it's footage and it's a low light environment, and the lower light you have, the more grain you'll get. And we can see here that we have this still image of Leonardo DiCaprio from the behind the scenes of Inception. And this is a still photo, and it has JPEG artifacts and other grain in itself, but the grain isn't moving because it's a still image. And we can especially notice the grain behind him because grain that's out of focus is much more prominent. It stands out a lot more. If we look at something that's about the same Z depth, if this were a 3D scene to him, such as these two chess pieces here, you can see that even they have quite a bit of grain. It's more noticeable in the lighter areas, and he really stands out. Well, even if his grain did match the scene, he does stand out because it's Leonardo DiCaprio in a chess environment. But he stands out quite a lot because there's so much movement. Even though this scene is static, there is so much movement with this grain, and he's got absolutely nothing. He's 100% still. So we need to add noise to this still image. And when you're compositing, many things that are anything that comes out of a 3D app will, because it's computer generated, won't have the natural noise that we get when we record the world with our cameras. It might actually have grain noise in places like ambient occlusion where the samples aren't high enough, but it won't have this noise that we see here. So we need to add that to our CG. Also, other elements that just say even live action that were shot possibly even on the same camera. Sometimes when you do green screen, you'll shoot the character at the highest resolution that you can, but then you'll scale it down in your scene. Just say the scene, you're making like a Lord of the Rings battle and you did 10,000 people, so you had to scale them right down. The noise that they had, while it would be exactly the same as the noise from your scene, because if you shot them on the same camera, but you wouldn't notice it at all because the noise that it did had is getting scaled down with the character. So then you would want to pre-compose all those characters together and add the noise on as well. So adding noise is helpful for both compositing live action and CG. So let's look at a few ways we could do this. We could add the simple noise effect. Attach that to Leo here. We might dial it up 5%, and that looks okay. It definitely looks better than not having it at all. But it's not really that good. Noise, if we crank it up a lot, it's very small. We have limited options. We can either make it black or white or color. It's okay, but not so good for this. We also have the grain. Now we can add grain or match grain. Let's try and add some grain here. And it gives you this little preview region because it's relatively slow to render. So it's helpful if you have a complex scene to only preview it, but we'll just go and set that to the final output. And this is going to be using, you can set it to certain film stock. So this is trying to emulate film grain here. And well, unfortunately I didn't shoot on any of these film stocks here, so that's not really going to be too helpful for me. It looks okay. It might look better than noise if we tweaked some of these settings here, the simple noise that we had before, but still not so good. And also, as we said before, slow to render. So Andrew Kramer came out with an effect called fast film grain, and we'll just add that here. And pretty much you apply it to a solid and you set that to overlay, which eliminates all the 50% gray. And if we set that to overlay, we could alpha matte it to Leo here. And Not so good. We could tweak the settings, but no, that's not ideal for us. What we want to do is we want to match the grain from the scene 100%, and the way we do that is just film grain on the we just film, and we film the maybe roll 5 or 10 seconds of footage from the camera that we that shot the background here, and we're going to get this grain 100% exactly the same grain for free. And all you have to do is turn your camera on, put the lens cap on, and shoot. And this is what you'll get here. It's actually not 100% black. I thought that if I film with my lens cap on, that I would get, you know, pitch black here. But because it's pitch black, there's so much noise that we're actually getting values, if we look up here, of around, you know, 12 and 13, and that's actually the noise. My camera is capable of getting fairly black pictures here, so in this scene we're not getting too much noise, but when we have it pitch black, we're getting quite a lot of noise here. And if I zoom in, I'll just try and preview it, we can see it here. We're getting quite a lot of noise. So things to remember when shooting a grain card, it's very simple. Just lens cap on, make sure the shutter speed is, it doesn't matter too much, but just make sure it's higher than, say, 25. So just film it at 50 to be safe. And there's pretty much no difference between a shutter speed of 50 or 2000, because it's pitch black either way, it'll give you the exact same noise. But just make sure the shutter speed is fast, otherwise the grain won't appear natural. So once we've got the grain card, I like to record 5 or 10 seconds of it, and then add it to my stock footage library. So every camera that I work with, I get a grain card, and you can see here we've got a grain card of the Sony HVR Z5P, and if I turn that on, we can see it's actually darker. This is a higher quality camera, so the noise, its noisiest settings are giving us much less noise here. But it's really handy if you know, every time you work with the camera, to have a grain card, and then you'll have before you know it, you'll have a library of all different types of cameras. So I'm not going to be using that one because I shot on the HV40 for this scene here. We'll be using the HV40 grain card, and let's import it into here. So let's grab the HV40 grain card, and to use that, it's just as simple as using the match grain. Now, by default, match grain actually gives you grain. It's quite terrible looking, actually. I'm not really happy with that. But all we need to do is set that to our HV40. And I'll also set this to final output. And that's looking quite good already. We actually don't really need a grain card in this scene. We could have just gone noise source layer and actually used the background, and we're getting pretty decent grain from there as well. And the reason it's working for us in this scene is because the scene is static, so we're getting the only movement in this scene is coming from the grain, so the match grain effect is easily able to take that and apply it to the Leo layer here. But you know, we're not always working with footage that's static, so if you've got movement in your background layer, it's actually going to confuse the match grain. It doesn't know whether it's movement or grain. It ideally wants a grain card where the only movement is the grain. So if you are referencing a layer with movement, it's going to get confused and you get some crazy weird stuff happening. So whilst we could use it for this scene, it would still be better for us to use the grain card, because you'll see in this scene we're getting varying amounts of grain from different parts of the image. Things that are in focus, such as these chess pieces here, are quite dark and don't have much grain. At the back wall, we're getting quite a lot of grain. It's much lighter, we're noticing it a lot more, and it's out of focus. So, but the thing is, with the grain card, if we preview this here, we're getting the same amount of grain everywhere, and that's going to be more accurate for us. Now this match grain it's not too slow, but it will slow your scene down if you have a complex scene. And if we go to the tweaking, sorry, the sampling, we can actually, we can increase the accuracy here by increasing the number of samples. 10 is max, and also increasing the sample size. And yes, that would make it slightly more accurate, but right now, if we set it to the grain card, we're getting some pretty nice results here, just on the lowest, sorry, on the default quality settings for the sampling. So you would rarely need to increase those. And if we have a look, it's looking quite good. I might bump it up just a little bit, 1.2. Yep, and that's looking really good. We're matching our grain nicely there. Now let's have a go at replicating this scene here, which was shot at a shutter speed of 1000, which is, gone crazy. You would probably never be shooting, at such terrible shutter speeds with low lighting. But if we add the match grain here, and we set it to, sorry, final output, and then I'll grab my grain card in here, and then we'll set the source to that grain card. You would think that by default, since our grain card is, our grain card is this exact grain here, that it would match it, but it hasn't at all. We're getting hardly anything. I think I also need to possibly move this grain card over, because of the way I actually trimmed the footage. So if we preview it here, we are getting the grain, but it's almost nothing. And that's simply the match grain effect. Doing a best guess, it's normally you would never be filming at these shutter speeds. So normally you would never need to use 100% of the grain in the grain card. So by default, it's actually toned it down. If we put the grain card to the front, we'll see that it's exactly matching the grain in areas like this. And this streak here, it's just like a hair or something on my sensor. I got to get that fixed. So don't worry about that. But everywhere else, the grain is matching 100%. So all we need to do is tell the match grain to, in the tweaking, to increase the intensity, because by default it's toned it down. So we might use a setting of 3, and that's looking quite good. Let's go at 100% here, and Leo is matching into our scene. Happy Leo. And the beauty of using a grain card that was shot on the same camera as your source footage is the grain matches pretty much 100%. You don't even need to tweak the size or softness. You get these values here for free. Everything matches really, really nicely. Even if you didn't have a grain card that was shot on the same camera, you might still want to use the match grain feature, because it gives such good looking grain. It's so much more convincing than the noise effect. If it was a different camera, then you might actually want to be tweaking the size and softness settings here. So that's pretty much it for this tutorial. Hope you've enjoyed it, and remember to shoot a grain card, because it'll give you the perfect grain for your scene, and it's very easy to set up and shoot.